afternoon on this Tuesday, March 18th. I'm Yumna Naufal. These are today's headlines. A civilian and 2 Lebanese soldiers are wounded during an exchange of gunfire between gunmen and armed forces in Tripoli. Syrian regime forces begin an assault on the last rebel-held areas in the Kalamoun Mountains on the Lebanese borders. And following the issuing of the decree for Crimean independence, Russian President Putin says Ukrainian authorities have stolen power and have opened the way for extremists. A civilian and 2 Lebanese soldiers were wounded during an exchange of gunfire between gunmen and armed forces in the northern city of Tripoli. The man was identified as Hussein Abdullah. The sources said that he was near an army post in Tripoli's vegetable market when gunmen engaged soldiers in a firefight. A hand grenade was also tossed at the army post during the midday clash. Earlier in the day, gunmen traded gunfire with soldiers at Talat al-Omari, but no casualties were reported from the 10 a.m. flare-up. During the skirmish with assault rifles, gunmen fired 3 rocket-propelled grenades toward an army post in Talat al-Omari, but missed the target. Syria Street is the one that separates the warring Tripoli neighborhoods of Jabal al-Muhsin, the predominantly Alawite area that owes allegiance to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, and the mainly Sunni Beit Tabbani, which supports the Syrian uprising. In other local news, the Kataib Party is expected to withdraw its threat to quit the cabinet following Prime Minister Tamam Salam's clarifications over the policy statement ahead of Parliament's vote of confidence. Salam offered clarifications over the government policy statement aimed at appeasing the Kataib Party, which had threatened to withdraw its ministers unless a clause on the state's authority in defending Lebanon was modified. Salam's move comes shortly after he had talks separately with former President Amin Jumail, the head of the Kataib Party, and his son Metin MP Sami Jumail at the Grand Sarai to discuss the party's reservations over the policy statement that fails to put Hezbollah's resistance against Israeli occupation under state authority as demanded by the March 14 coalition. After hearing Amin Jumail's reservation, Salam said the cabinet's policy statement has a firm commitment to the state's sovereignty, authority, and the unilateralism of its decision-making. British Ambassador to Lebanon Tom Fletcher kicked off a tour in border towns in the northern Akkar province. He arrived in Akkar aboard a Lebanese army helicopter that landed in the Clayat airport in the north, and it was accompanied by the military attaché at the British embassy. Media reports said the army commander General Jean Ahwaji also accompanied him. The tour included towns of Shadra, Indiket, Munjiz, Al-Abudiyeh. The Syrian Air Force has regularly carried out airstrikes with warplanes and helicopters targeting rebel positions around Akkad and the Bekaa towns with a majority of Shia populations, which have repeatedly come under rocket attacks by either rebels seeking to topple President Assad's regime or armed men supporting them. A Syrian worker was found stabbed to death at a construction site north of Beirut this morning in an apparent revenge killing linked to the war in Syria. The Daily Star reported that Ali Musa Harmoush was found lying in a pool of blood in one of the rooms of an under-construction residential complex in Fanar, just north of Beirut. On the nearby wall, a note written with the victim's blood read, "In revenge for Yabrud." Just to remind you, Syrian regime forces and Hezbollah fighters seized control of the border town of Yabrud in Syria's Kalamoun region this Sunday, dealing the opposition a heavy blow. A Syrian was found on Monday stabbed to death in North Metin district with a message next to him saying that he was killed to avenge the fall of the central strategic Syrian town. Syrian regime forces continue to assault the last rebel-held areas in the Kalamoun Mountains strategically located on the Lebanese border after overrunning the key opposition bastion. The capture of the town of Yabrud on Sunday by Syrian troops and Hezbollah fighters comes shortly after the conflict entered its 4th year and marked a significant setback for the rebels as it severs their supply lines from across the border. The army began an offensive against remaining rebel enclaves in Kalamoun on Monday evening, including shelling the village of Flita, according to Hezbollah source. Now, a security source in Damascus said the army would launch operations in all areas where terrorists are to be found, using the regime term for rebels battling to overthrow President Assad. Coming up next on missing Malaysian Airlines, investigators consider suicide by the captains. Stay with us, we've got more. Welcome back. You're watching Future TV. Following the issuing of the decree recognizing Crimean independence, Russian President Vladimir Putin condemned the so-called authorities in Ukraine, saying they had stolen power in a coup and had opened the way for extremists who would stop at nothing to determine the future of Ukraine. He also defended Russia's move to annex the Crimean region, saying that the rights of ethnic Russians have been abused by the Ukrainian government. He pointed at the example of Kosovo's independence bid, supported by the West, and said that Crimea's secession from Ukraine repeats Ukraine's own secession from the Soviet Union back in 1991. He denied Western accusations that Russia invaded Crimea prior to the referendum, saying Russian troops were sent there in line with a treaty with Ukraine that allows Russia to have up to 25,000 troops at its Black Sea Fleet base in Crimea. Now, a UN spokesperson said that Secretary General Ban Ki-moon was deeply disappointed by the referendum vote in Crimea, and speaking in New York, he said, the name of the person is Stefan Dujarric, he said that Ban was concerned that the Crimean referendum will only exacerbate the situation.
In Ukraine, since the beginning of this crisis, the Secretary General has urged all parties to avoid hasty steps in this already complex and tense situation. The Secretary General is deeply disappointed and concerned that the Crimea referendum will only exacerbate this situation. He encourages all parties to work for a solution that is guided by the principles of the United Nations Charter, including respecting Ukraine's unity and sovereignty. He condemns the violence which occurred over the weekend in eastern Ukraine and which resulted in injuries and the loss of life on all sides. The Secretary General once again urges all parties to refrain from violence and to commit themselves to de-escalation and inclusive national dialogue in the pursuit of a political and diplomatic solution. A deterioration of the situation will have serious repercussions for the people of Ukraine, the region, and beyond. He urges all parties in Ukraine and those with influence to avoid any steps that could further increase tensions. Above all, the Secretary General urges all concerned to intensify their efforts and engage constructively towards a peaceful solution to this crisis, with the aspirations of all people of Ukraine foremost in mind.
Talks between Iran and 6 world powers aimed at agreeing a lasting nuclear deal have resumed in Vienna, in Austria. The two sides hope to reach an agreement by July that trims Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for an end to sanctions choking Tehran's economy. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif is leading his country's delegation, while EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton negotiates, at least formally, on behalf of the United States, Russia, China, Britain, France, and Germany. Iranian media says the Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif has cancelled a customary pre-talks dinner with Ashton on Monday evening. Still making headlines around the world, the co-pilot of the missing Malaysian jetliner spoke the last words heard from the cockpit as investigators consider suicide by the captain or first officer as a possible explanation for the disappearance. No trace of Malaysia Airlines flight has been found since it vanished on March 8th, with 239 people aboard. Investigators are increasingly convinced it was diverted perhaps thousands of miles off course by someone with deep knowledge of the plane and commercial navigation. Airline Chief Executive Ahmad Jawhari Yahya states that it is unclear exactly when one of the plane's automatic tracking systems had been disabled. The plane vanished from civilian air traffic control screens off Malaysia's east coast less than an hour after taking off from Kuala Lumpur. Malaysian authorities believe that someone on board shut off its communications system. And the long-term friend of Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah defended the Malaysia Airlines pilot flying record and his personal character. Chris Nissen was working as an industry technology consultant for Malaysia Airlines when he became neighbors with Zahari. The two, who lived in the same neighborhood in the Malaysian capital of Kuala Lumpur for 6 years, struck up a friendship.
Oh, it's hard to believe that he would have been to do anything like that, or to, like the speculation of pilot suicide or a pilot hijacking. I just can't imagine with his character and what we knew of him, it just wouldn't make any sense that he would have anything to do with any sort of deliberate action on his part. You know, whether he, you know, his piloting skills would be great, you know, and I think he would do anything he could to preserve the lives of his passengers and the cargo, the property of Malaysia Airlines. He was really proud of that company, and he would have done anything for them.
Loren Scott, the fashion designer and celebrity stylist who was Mick Jagger's girlfriend, was found dead in Manhattan in what was being investigated as an apparent suicide. She had texted her assistant about 90 minutes prior and asked her to come to her apartment, but did not say why. Scott's elegant designs were favored by celebrities like Madonna, Nicole Kidman, Oprah Winfrey, Penelope Cruz, and Michelle Obama, to name a few. She launched a limited edition collection for Banana Republic last December. And she was adopted by Mormon parents and raised in Utah. She had her own fashion label, popular with celebrities. She was also a fixture on Jagger's arm, and at around 6'3", that's about 193, she towered over her famous boyfriend. She founded her high-end label in 2006 and recently created a more affordable line of clothes with Banana Republic. Oscar-winning actress Kate Winslet was honored with a star on the storied Hollywood Walk of Fame hours after an earthquake jolted Tinseltown awake. The Titanic star joked that the pre-dawn 4.4 magnitude quake, which was felt strongly across the Los Angeles area, occurred just as she was getting ready with a breast pump for her 3-month-old son. She had a baby boy in December with new husband Ned Rock'n'Roll. Winslet has been nominated 6 times for Oscars, including for her role alongside Leonardo DiCaprio's 1998 Titanic, finally winning in 2009 for playing a Nazi concentration camp guard in The Reader. The British actress Titanic castmate Kathy Bates, meanwhile, made a more earthly joke about the famous stars, which honored generations of celebrities along a stretch of tourist-thronged Hollywood sidewalk.
I honestly had no idea that this was going to be quite such a well-attended event, especially after the earthquake this morning, which frightened me quite a lot, actually. I made for a door frame with my breast pump in my hand. Titanic was 18 years ago. Would you believe that? I had my 21st birthday on that film shoot. I'm 38 now. It's really, really wonderful to be here and to be given this award, this accolade, this wonderful moment in my life that I know I will never forget.
Kate is Hollywood royalty, right? So she always has to look her best. Now, sometimes with these stars, you might get a little popcorn, a little puke, a little dog poo. So Kate has this wonderful Victorian little, what do you call this? A little brush thing? Yeah, dustpan, excuse me, and a brush that she can sweep up any unsightly little things that go.
It has been, I'm going to start crying. It has been such an honor to see somebody who has navigated this industry in such a beautiful professional way and still remains intact her love for acting and her love for herself. And I couldn't be more honored to know you and to work with you and to learn from you, and congratulations.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. A civilian and 2 Lebanese soldiers are wounded during an exchange of gunfire between gunmen and armed forces in Tripoli. Syrian regime forces begin and continue an assault on the last rebel-held areas in the Karamun Mountains on the Lebanese borders. And following the issuing of the decree for Crimean independence, Vladimir Putin says Ukrainian authorities have stolen power and have opened the way for extremists. Those are your Tuesday headlines live here on Future Television in Beirut. I'm Yumna Nofal, wishing you a good night. Take care.